Guinness. I wonder if you could take us through your background and also your experiences with the Scole group.
I've been interested in psychical research for quite a long time, for various reasons I don't have to bother with now. And I've been a member of the Society for quite a long time, and I was on its council for some years. Probably through those links, Monty Keane invited me to come to one of the sessions, because he knew I had already been to another sitter group in the States with physical phenomena, the SORAT group in Missouri. This was in 1996, I sat with them. So in 1997 he invited me into one of these sessions without giving me any brief about what had happened. I quite deliberately didn't have anything about the phenomena they had. I told them about the SORAT phenomena. He didn't say they're similar or different. They're actually very different. So when we got in there, it started, and very quickly these lights started jumping about all over the place, to my great surprise. Hi, Bob. And so I thought, my God, how can I test this? What can I test about these things? So I thought, well, how many are there? Well, there are obviously quite a few. I think there must have been up to 10 at some time, sometimes just one. And then I thought, how much light power have they got? So I thought, how can I test that? I want a reflector. How can I do it with hands? They actually went inside a bowl, and I noticed it lit the bowl up. So I can do that with my hands, can't I? I'll put my hands like this and see if the light's coming out. I don't suppose they will, but they did. They came in, they sat there. They had quite detectable mass. It was quite obvious they had mass, which surprised me. They were too bright to actually see what they were made of. But they came into my hands, and because they came into my hands like this, they lit up my hands and even my face. I could see my face was lit up, which surprised me a lot. I mean, I was down here. This is what? 18 inches, 2 feet? That was much more light power than I expected. And I could see there were no rods, because they lit themselves up. I couldn't see what was inside them, because it was too bright, but it was strong enough to see there were no rods or anything nonsense like that. They were just little flecks of some sort. And then I thought, they've landed on me and I can feel them there. So what about if I close my hands like this? And then what happened from then on was quite normal. What you would expect. It was normal. They just banged around inside my hand. I think 3. I'm not quite sure. Certainly more than 1. Maybe 2, 1 or 2 or 3. And they just banged around inside my hand. I could feel that.
You say quite normal, but...
I mean, given what was happening in the first place, the effect I then experienced in my hand over was quite normal. Things with some mass were banging around inside them and hitting and rebounding off me. In that sense, it was quite normal. Then I opened my hand up again, and then they flew off. Whatever flowing went away, you know.
And as a professor with presumably some academic history in investigating various things, did you find that you could come up with any explanation that would be within normal?
No, I was quite certain, particularly after doing this, that this wasn't trickery.
Even though it had been suggested that people didn't do what you did, and that's put their hands around items and so on.
What I found out afterwards was, from Monty told me afterwards, when I was a bad boy, I hadn't asked permission. Apparently they need to give permission for things, and I hadn't asked, and the cyanide had dropped. This I didn't know at the time, though I had felt a little tension. Perhaps I was a bit surprised I'd done this. Anyway, apparently the cyanide had dropped because I hadn't asked. We had not asked them with a capital T for permission for this, so I was never invited back. But I had at least had the, I didn't know about asking permission the first time, but I had at least had the effect of having these things enclosed. And not only that, I had seen them visibly, quite clearly enough.
So what is your...
to see that there were, oh yes, I think there's some effect taking place.
So you think there's an effect taking place?
Those lights, I'm quite convinced that those lights were having an effect, and it was something with mass.
And do you think there is some sort of hypothesis we could come up with to work with in the future to encompass this sort of phenomena? And do you think that science is moving towards this in any way?
No, it's probably moving away from it, if anything. We see waffling on quantum mechanics doesn't get you anywhere, I think, very much here. Because you're not here at the subatomic level, you're at a physical size level. You're at a level here that something's big enough that it can hit a hand. And similarly, I had the hands effects that other people report too. I could actually see one of these hands. There was a black shadow on my hand. I had 1 on the face, or 1 on the leg, and 5 on the hands, I think it was. And I could definitely feel the oppression, and I felt round, and after the first time I was shot. Again, you see, I hadn't been prepared deliberately. So the first time this happened, I thought, my God, what's that? Who's that? And then when I realised what was happening, then the second and third, and there were 6 altogether. I actually felt I could see a hand shape. And the only other times it was just too dark to see anything. One I could see, because of these lights actually, I could see there was a hand shape sitting there. I didn't know whose hands it was. It looked a woman's, if anything, but I don't know. But I could see that.
So given your experience, you're obviously sharing this with other people, but where do you see this type of investigation going in the future? From the SPR's point of view?
Side, well, I don't know about the investigative people there know much more than I do. From a theoretical point of view, I think your only chance is some theory about parallel universes. And there's no problem, this is frequently misunderstood. There is no problem about positing parallel universes. There can be a nuclear war taking place right here now in another physics. If it's not interacting with our physics, there's no problem about this. There's absolutely no difficulty about conceiving of such a thing.
So do you think perhaps that the scientists on our side who are investigating things from their own understanding of physics are perhaps missing a point that they're...
Well, they're missing this trick, yes. I mean, how many Big Bangs were there?
I think
so if there's more than one Big Bang, you may have more universes in the co-present. There's no problem about having that. The big thing is how do they interact with each other? That's the...
It has been said that the absence of a theory or a hypothesis about these things is what's holding back the investigation of paranormal phenomena in a sensible way. So hopefully in the future some sort of hypothesis will be formulated.
Well, certainly something on a parallel universe type of principle, maybe more than one Big Bang and hence more than one universe, then there is co-presence. But the big problem is how do they interact with each other? That's the hard one. Right.
And this is sometimes the explanation given by the spirit teams who say that they find the interaction between the dimensions very difficult.
Yes, that's right. My Sorat stuff, I've got loads of them. I've written quite a long paper on the Sorat people, and there is communication by letter. And they're full of this stuff. I have letters at home from them, whatever them is.
So do you think that there's anyone in the world who may well be able to, or could you suggest anyone who might be able to formulate a theory
I think of all sorts of people who could do this. And you need to be a decent person in cosmology with the appropriate mathematical physics, but they won't touch it.
Okay. Professor Grattan Guinness, thank you very much.
Yeah.